Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Rama, Rama, Hare Hare.
I'll do it. All of you, please pay attention. People will come late. And thank you for not coming late. Thank you for coming on time. But those that come late need to sit in the back, not to disrupt everything. Come sit forward as far. No, just come right up here. Come right up here. Come forward. Please come forward. Thank you. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Yati Namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sanjavadi Paschatya Desatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. What part is it? Part 4? Part 5? Part 4. Teachings of Prahlad Maharaj. Well, this is the beginning of chapter 6, and we've almost completed, but not yet completed, chapter 5 of Canto 7, Prahlad's teachings to Hiranyakashipu, his teachings to Shandanamarka. He gave his last teaching to Hiranyakashipu. He didn't like it. It was all over after that. So we'll finish chapter 5 and then begin chapter 6, where he's speaking to his classmates. He went through a little bit of an ordeal in between. Two things before we begin. One is a little review from yesterday. And those of you that weren't with us yesterday, we had a little controversy, a lively discussion on a verse from the Mundaka Upanishad, and everyone seems to have had memory lapse about the first part of that verse. The first part of that verse is from Prabhupada's purport, and he's showing, this picture is showing, some fellow who looks like he's quite a scholar, and Prabhupada's reference to this verse Nayamatma pravachinena labhyodna medhaya na bahuna shutena. Neither this nor that can one get Krishna. One cannot become self-realized simply by having an academic education, by presenting lectures in an erudite way, pravachinena labhya, or by being an intelligent scientist who discovers many wonderful things. So that's not the method of self-realization. That's the first half. And I showed the second half, and everyone was like, what about this? And what about that? What about this? And what about that? And because the second half says, the Lord is obtained only by one whom he himself chooses. To such a person, he manifests his own form. So it's meant to emphasize the bhakti process that Prahlad Maharaj is teaching, and de-emphasize the process of scholarship, or pravachinena, being a good speaker, or any of those other things, offering expert explanations. Does that help? Those of you that are with us, you can sigh a sigh of relief now, because it's very clear. It's not unclear. And so what earns us that eligibility for being one who Krishna chooses? It's you sit in the Bhagavatam class, that's all. And then Krishna is choosing you to reveal himself through the message of Srimad Bhagavatam. And then, according to your bhakti, then you'll realize more, or you realize less, or somewhere in between. But that's how Krishna chooses. Those who approach him submissively by oral reception, he then chooses to disclose himself to such people. And by the way, the very same verse is found in Katha Upanishad, as you see on the screen here. The second thing I'd like to do before we start rolling with chapter 6 is just a little bit a continuation on Sri Ramanujacharya. And we didn't complete, so I'm plan to complete the discussion about his student life. So where we ended yesterday in his student life is Yadava Prakash had a planned murder plot that didn't work because Govinda, the cousin of Ramanujacharya, overheard the students and Yadava Prakash talking about the murder plot. So he informed Ramanuja, they're planning to murder you. And so Ramanuja took the hint, and he disappeared into the forest, and they searched for him, couldn't find him. They thought he was finished. And several months later, Ramanujacharya made his way back to, Yadava Prakash made his way back to Kanchi. Lo and behold, there was Ramanujacharya, who they thought was dead. But this is important. On the way back, when Ramanujacharya was searching because he didn't know the way, and he didn't have a GPS with him, he knew where Kanchi was, but he didn't know how to get there. So he found, if you remember, he came across a Fowler couple. Again, the language is used again and again. A husband and wife whose occupation was killing birds. And he said to them, do you know which way is Kanchi? He said, oh, not only do we know the way, we're going there. Let's go together. We've done so many sinful activities of killing birds, and we're going to this sacred place in order to get purification for the sins of killing birds. And so they went together, and it took a short period of time. It doesn't say how much, short period of time. And he Ramanujacharya, being young, was requested to go into a well, kind of like steps to get to the bottom where there was some water. And by the time he got back up, the couple was gone. And then he understood this was Lakshmi and Narayan who had helped him swiftly get back. Because when he went around, they couldn't find them. He asked, which way's Kanchi? And the people said, why are you asking this question? You live here. This is Kanchi. And he realized he just got that, a quick pass to his hometown. So when Yadava Prakash came back and saw his student who he thought was dead, ready for his classes, he was pretending to be very happy, and he accepted him in class. So this is still his student life. And there were already 2 confrontations between the teacher and the student, because the teacher was an impersonalist and Ramanujacharya wasn't. And he just didn't like those impersonal teachings. That's not a good place, because there's people sitting on the steps and they can't see through a box. Thank you. So some of you know these phrases. They're found in Chaitanya Charitamrita in sections where Prabhupada is dealing with impersonalism. Oh, by the way, some of you may be coming for the South India Yatra. And those of you that are coming to the South India Yatra, that one of the main places we're going to visit, at least starting points, is Udupi. And a suggestion was made, and I thought it was a really good suggestion. We're also going to visit another place in South India, which was the headquarters of Shankaracharya. Sringeri Math. We're going to go there with our masks on and see, and then we'll have some nice discussions about maybe what Ramanujacharya said to Yadava Prakash on these verses. And if you're not going to come, they'll be all nicely recorded. Somebody's going to do that. And you'll be able to see Sringeri Math, at least through YouTube. So these were 2 verses. He already discussed 2 other ones. These on a particular day, Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma and Neha Na Nasti Kinchana. These are celebrated verses from the Upanishads that were rendered with an impersonal understanding. The impersonal is not person. The personal is just what it says here. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. So he didn't just raise his hand. He said, wait a minute, Ramanuja said, the words Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma do not mean that the Supreme Absolute Truth is nothing but the sum total of all creation. Rather, it is seen that the universe comes from the Supreme as his energy. Now this is Vishishta Dvaita in its seed form. The universe comes from the Supreme as his energy, that's his Vishishtas or attributes, is maintained by him, and in the end is dissolved back in him. He maintains his own separate identity. although everything is indeed a part of his expanded energy. This is a capsule statement of Vishishta Advaita. So there's the Advaita part, the Absolute Supreme, within which is everything, and there are attributes within that which is everything. And sometimes the attributes are manifest, sometimes they're not manifest, but they're attributes of the Absolute Supreme, so Vishishta Advaita. Or the English is qualified monism, the Advaita is monism, and qualities or Vishishtas or attributes is the Vishishta part. So the Supreme Absolute, let's say it with fourth time, the Absolute Truth, according to Ramanujacharya, is Supreme Brahman. And the Supreme Brahman, the Absolute Truth, has attributes. Sometimes, and this cosmic manifestation, Sarvam Idam Kal Brahma, this is attributes or Shaktis, potencies of that one Supreme that are manifest, sustained for some time, and withdrawn back within him. And yet he, the Absolute Truth, is not just a blob or the impersonal Brahman, but is a person who has attributes. And then the other one, the words Neha Nanasti Kinchana do not mean that there is no variety at all in this world. Rather, we should understand that all the varieties of creation are held as one, just as separate pearls are held on one thread, although they are still individual entities. The pearls are individual entities. There's the oneness in that they're held on the same thread, and that same thread in the comparison is the Supreme. And then there's pearls, or there's entities that have their own identity. But the oneness is because they're strung on the same thread. Thus we can see how everything is both one and separate at the same time. Now, that one and separate at the same time sounds like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings. And then maybe that's just, the hand of the translator, how he weaved this in there. But the oneness and separateness that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu emphasized is not in conflict with the teachings of Ramanujacharya. That is to say, the Vishishta Advaita conception is there are times when the cosmic manifestation is withdrawn, and then those attributes are within the Supreme Person. And there are times when the cosmic manifestation is expanded, and though they're manifested in an external form, they're at one with, but different from the source. Anyway, enough philosophy. So that was it. Yadava Prakash said, "You don't like my teachings, you don't have to come here to class." And Ramanujacharya said, "On your order, so be it." And he stopped coming to class. That was it for him and Yadava Prakash, at least as a student. And so he was doing his studies at home. And some of you may remember, just going back a little bit, Kanchi Purna was going to visit a temple, and when Ramanuja was a young boy, he would pass through the town where he lived to go to see that temple and then come back. So now Kanchi Purna is a resident of Kanchi Puram, or Kanchi. And so he was going to see the deity, Varadaraj, in Kanchi Purna, and he visited Ramanujacharya's home. And Ramanujacharya, young boy, 18, newly married, and was so much holding respect for Kanchi Purna that he requested him to give him shelter. And he objected. This is not possible. How is this possible? I'm a Shudra. and you're a Brahmana. This is just completely against our culture and our tradition. And then he objected and said, whatever your birth may be, your quality is, you're respected by everybody, including me. So you kindly accept this request. And Kanchi, whoops, I spelled it wrong. Kanchi Purna said, every day, here's some service you can do for the deity. Every day, you should bring a jar of water to the temple for the service of Sri Varadaraj. In this way, you'll quickly receive his mercy, and all your desires will be fulfilled. Pretty simple. Go get some water every day. Patram pushpam palam. So obviously, it's with love and devotion. And so with love and devotion, what did Ramanuja do? He followed the instruction. And he went to that very same well where he saw the Supreme Lord in the form of the Fowler couple. And there's the place where he got the water and brought the water every day to the deity of Varadaraj. And so his student life isn't completely over yet. It's winding towards the conclusion. He has this benediction from Kanchi Purna. I have to change the wording here to Kanchi Purna. And meanwhile, in Sri Rangam, Yamunacharya, who was over 100 years of age, had looked like his life was finished. He was so ill, he couldn't move. His students were coming to him and asking for instructions, what to do, how to understand this and that, as if this was it. And he was unable to speak. He was immobilized. And in course of time, some kind of miracle thing happened, and his illness seemed to lift. And he then started resuming going to see the deity of Ranganath. And he then was visited by one of his disciples, an elevated disciple, Mahapurna. And Mahapurna, he instructed Mahapurna, what happened, please tell me what happened to Ramanuja, this young boy from Kanchi. And he said he left the association of Yadava Prakash, and he's now studying on his own. So immediately he requested, Yamunacharya requested Mahapurna, one of his senior disciples, to go bring him here, all the way from Kanchi to the temple of Ranganath. He wanted to meet him, he wanted to give his blessings, and immediately Mahapurna left. And that's where we began, kind of, where while Mahapurna was gone to fetch or to bring Ramanuja to meet Yadava Prakash, not yet, meet Yamunacharya, Yamunacharya left his body. So they never spoke. And then when he got there, because he was requested by the senior-most Acharya to come and see him, meet him, he saw him in that condition with the three fingers bent, and so as he normally like this, no. And then he expressed what was intended for him to do, three things, and the three fingers became normal again, and everyone was astonished. So they understood Ramanujacharya as the next person in line, following Yamunacharya. And things started to happen further after that. Now, I'm not going to go into the question that was asked, because it's a long topic, of how many teachers and who and the sequence and how did it happen and so on and so on. the principal person who was his shelter. There's a nice verse. I think I'm going to add this to this presentation for the future. There's a nice teaching by Rupa Goswami. Either Rupa Goswami or Jiva Goswami. Rupa Goswami, I think, about the one's primary guru, the one who carries you to the spiritual world. And there may be other persons who have some role or some function to play. So there's language, there's Sanskrit terminology for this. Very clearly, Dhimonachari was that person for Ramanujacharya. And there were mothers from whom he received mantra and so forth and so on. So that's another day to discuss those things. So we're going back to Prahlad Maharaj and his instructions to his classmates. But before we get there, there's a nice section where Prahlad Maharaj is being glorified amongst the 12 Mahajans. It comes in Canto 7, Chapter 10, towards the middle of Chapter 10. Chapter 10 is some exchange between Prahlad and Lord Nrsingadev. It's a very wonderful section. Lord Nrsingadev at the end of Chapter 9 has asked him, take some benediction. And the reply is, please don't ask me to take a benediction. There's only one thing, I'm the servant, you're the master, that's it. So please don't ask me to take something. He's teaching the way of pure devotional service, again. And then Lord Nrsingadev says, amongst all exalted devotees of mine, you are the superlative. You are the topmost. And there's a commentary to that verse, which you see on the screen. It's chapter 10, text 21, where Madhvacharya recites something that goes back to the sixth canto. And in the sixth canto, there's a description of the 12 Mahajans. And then Madhvacharya quotes a verse from Skanda Purana. The verse in Skanda Purana says the same thing. Of the followers of those souls who are perfected, Prahlad Maharaj is the best. And others are his followers amongst those who are perfected souls. That's pretty high. It's not, he's not a gopi. But those who are lovers of the personality of God, he's the superlative. Those who are in that list of 12 Mahajans, he's the leader of the 12, according to Madhvacharya, according to Skanda Purana, according to Lord Nrsingadev. So it's a very special person that we're hearing from. And naturally, Srila Prabhupada would quote the verses. My plan is, I guess it's going to be tomorrow evening, we're going to do a review of the lessons, like 5 lessons so far, because they're very important verses that are repeated again and again. And when Prabhupada brings up the verse, he'll spend 10 minutes on each verse, each word, looking at it from different angles, because it's the way of pure devotional service. And Prabhupada wanted to teach us the way of pure devotional service. Not that we're almost there, just need a little nudge. We're far from there. But the teaching is what the goal is, and he wanted us to know what the goal is and to, by that sound vibration, help us move closer to that goal. In the introduction to Chapter 6, which we haven't begun yet, Prabhupada writes in the introduction, by accepting the lotus feet of Prahlad Maharaj, who is in the Parampara succession, one will be able to understand the mode of spiritual life. In accepting this mode of activity, there is no need of material qualifications. That's inspiring. Supposing you don't have material qualifications. I know a few people, starting with myself, material qualifications. That's a joke. But no need. If that's no need, then what's the need? Just follow the way of Prahlad Maharaj. So where we ended up was the last straw where Lord Nrsingadev, where Hiranyakashipu heard from Prahlad what the best thing that he learned, and the best thing he learned was the 9 processes of bhakti, and that's it. He ordered to have him killed. Not a nice man. Well, it didn't work. He tried exposing him to poisonous snakes. He had him tossed off a cliff. He had him attempted to be trampled under a wild elephant. There's some more snakes. Fire. A vat of boiling oil. Nothing. And when nothing happened, Hiranyakashipu became afraid of his little son, and he had him arrested. If I can't kill him, at least I'll put him in jail. And then there was some discussion with Chandannamarka. They saw how panicky he was and enraged he was, and so they tried to pacify him. And the pacifying words, there's a long section, but basically here's what they said. Prahlad is nothing but a child. And as such, he cannot be a cause of anxiety for you. By the time he is somewhat grown up and has assimilated our instructions and served our spiritual master, that's their teacher, their father, Shukracharya, he will change his intelligence, thus there is no need. There need be no cause for anxiety. So that's the end of chapter 5. After attempted murder didn't work, we'll take care of him. We'll just, continue to feed him poison and he'll be all right. So chapter 6 begins, and the teachers are teaching the students, and it says what they're teaching materialistic ways of life, this and that and the other thing. It lists the lessons that they were trying to pass on to the students. Nothing went in with Prahlad. The other students kind of thought it was nice. And then the teachers had to attend to some household duties, so they left the classroom. And generally, when a teacher leaves the classroom, what happens in the class? Time to play. That's when if you're little kids, you like to play. So they wanted to play, and they wanted Prahlad, their leader and dear friend, to play with them, and he wasn't so inclined. So he sat them down and gave them lessons in Krishna consciousness. And after giving them lessons in Krishna consciousness, he taught them to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And they really liked it. Where'd you learn all this? That's chapter 7. So here's some of his instructions to his classmates. One day, when the teachers, Chandannamarka, went home to attend to household duties, the classmates of Prahlad Maharaj called him to play. Prahlad Maharaj, who was truly the supreme learned person, then addressed his class friends in very sweet language. All the children were very much affectionate and respectful to Prahlad Maharaj, and were not so polluted, their hearts and eyes being fixed upon him, they looked at him with great earnestness. Now you see the verses, that's still the end of chapter 5. So the teachings haven't begun yet. Here's one of the teachings. Smiling, he began to teach them about the uselessness of materialistic way of life. And who knows the first verse? I'm going to show it on the screen, but who knows the first verse of chapter 6? I see 2 hands. Komara acharat pragyo Whoa. Now, if I give that first line, how many know the verse? Okay, let's recite it at least twice, maybe 3 times, because Prabhupada recites it hundreds of times, and he never tires of reciting it another 100 times. Let's say it together. Komara acharit pragyo dharman bhagavataniha dolabam manusham janma tad api adruvam arthadam. Say a couple of things, and we'll go back and recite the verse again. So, the very beginning of life, Kaumara, is meant for those who are pragya, Stita Pragya from Bhagavad Gita, those who are intelligent. Prabhupada is translated as those who are sufficiently intelligent. Even at the tender age of childhood, that's his Kaumara translation, they, having achieved this human form of life, which is Durlabam Manusham Janma, the human form of life is very rarely achieved, because there are lots of other species you could achieve. So come to the human form, and those that have sufficient intelligence, they'll engage in devotional service from the tender age of childhood. And that's who he's speaking to, is because the classmates are at least 5, so that's when the Kumara age begins. Most even then, kids start going to school at 5. What's it around here? Is it 5? Public schools, 5 o'clock, 5 years old? 5 or 6? 5 or 6. Okay. Let's do it again. Kamara acharet pragyo dharman bhagavataniha dolabam manusham janma tad api adruvam artadam. Prabhupada's translation, Prahlad Maharaj said, one who is sufficiently intelligent, pragyo, should use the human form of body from the very beginning of life, Kaumara, in other words, from the tender age of childhood, to practice the activities of devotional service, giving up all other engagements. You don't have to do your homework. You don't have to clean your room. You don't have to brush your teeth. Just give up all other engagements, please, and just do devotional service. Wait a minute, those can be also devotional service, can't they? Brush your teeth and do your homework and clean your room and don't hit your brother or sister. That can be devotional service too. The human body is most rarely achieved, durlabham, and although temporary, api adruvam, Dhruvam, like Dhruva Maharaj, and Adruvam, and Api Adruvam. Although temporary, like other bodies, it is meaningful because in human life one can perform devotional service. Even a slight amount of sincere devotional service can give one artadam, complete perfection. Sounds very promising, and it's true. It's not just a nice advertisement. It's true. The potency is there. Potential is there. There's qualifier, sincere devotional service, but even a slight amount of sincere devotional service can give one complete perfection. And this is one of the teachings upon which Rupa Goswami wrote what he wrote about devotional service. So Prabhupada spends some time discussing each of the words in his purport. Rarely achieved. Durlabham, rarely achieved. Rarely achieved. Okay, just checking. After transmigrating, look at all those species of life. I don't see 8,400,000 forms, but that's a lot of forms. And there's some trees over there too. Meaningful artadam, because one can perform devotional service, the only chance to return back to Godhead. And one who is sufficiently intelligent, pragya, should use the human form of body from the very beginning of life. Komara, achar, acharet. One should practice from the early stages of life, from the tender age of childhood, to practice the activities of devotional service, giving up all other engagements. But he goes through each word, each word, each word. So here's a nice example. Somebody know who that person is? Prabhupada is teaching to write Sanskrit. I see one hand. You don't know who that is? You know. Dwarkadish. 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 Dwarkadish was a nice young devotee. He's still a nice devotee. He's a little older now. And Prabhupada is teaching him how to write Sanskrit. Holding his hand and moving his hand to teach him how to write Sanskrit. So how fortunate to have Prabhupada's hand on your hand to teach you how to write the Sanskrit alphabet. The whole purpose of Vedic civilization and of reading the Vedas is to attain the perfect stage of devotional service in the human form of life. So the proper teacher is one who, there's steps and there's little things, like learning, writing the Sanskrit alphabet isn't perfection of life. But it's when the consciousness behind that activity is to reach Krishna, and whatever I can do to help me reach Krishna, let me do that. And the person guiding you is helping you doing that. That's ideal. Gradually, throughout the entire world, human society is losing interest in the perfection of life, which is true. And Vishitam Tamishram, entering into the darkness of ignorance. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments, at the end of the last chapter, it was mentioned that Prahlad was compassionate and friendly. That was to his classmates. Birth as a human is rare. One attains human form by good fortune, and it is transient. Though you exist today, it is not certain you will exist tomorrow. How can bhakti be perfected? This is a nice question Vishwanath asks. How can bhakti be perfected in such a short time? And it's because when properly utilized, it's very effective. The birth is effective. When properly utilized, it can be very effective. That is to say, in other forms of life, it's not even possible. So if it's possible and it's the most valuable thing, why not do it? That's what he's telling his classmates. Their thing is we want to play, so we're going to hear some more. This is the same verse again. What's going on? Okay, here's the second verse. Devotional service to Lord Vishnu is natural because, I think it was supposed to show the verse for 6:2. Aham bija pratakpita. Devotional service is natural because Lord Vishnu is the most beloved, the master of the soul, and the well-wisher of all other living beings. Priya Atmeshwara Suhrit. Priya Atmeshwara Suhrit. Suhrit is the best friend. He's the very dearmost best friend of all living entities. He's the Ishvara of all living entities. because it's completely natural, there's no worldly impediment other than the mind, no worldly impediment in reestablishing that natural, intimate relationship between us and the personality of Godhead. Just like the relationship between father and son is quite natural. There may be some feelings that make it a little uncomfortable, but it's a natural relationship. Regardless of the species of life the soul receives, happiness and distress are automatically obtained without endeavor, according to one's past fruitive activities. One cannot avoid happiness and distress under any circumstances, as long as one is in the material field, that is. Duality exists. So now he's going to go further with his friends and give them guidance, as he received from Narada, how to live a life of devotion instead of just a life of playing while you're little kids. Endeavors mainly for sense gratification are not to be performed. Whoop, but something happened. Results in loss of time and energy without actual profit, Prabhupada's words. Even so-called benefits cannot solve real problems of life. So people are after worldly happiness, and the worldly happiness, just like that image, everyone reacted to it yesterday. This family sitting, or wherever they were, sitting around a table with their liquor on the table and whatever else was going on, partying in happy spirits. Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you may die. And there's nothing more. So, whatever that something is, it's not what real happiness is. There is such a thing as real happiness, and that's not what real happiness is. Because real happiness is of the soul, and thus eternal. And those other kinds of happinesses, they're not what real happiness is. And when one who's chasing the happiness in that manner, guess what? You're buying into the world of duality, which means next comes distress. That happiness is no longer, and it turns into distress. It's just the nature of duality. When you go for the happiness in the duality realm, and you're buying into illusion, that which is not real happiness, and the misery, which is not what real misery is either. When the party's over, there's a hangover or something. And the last point that Prabhupada is making here, the real problems of life are not solved. And the real problems of life, we all know the real problems of life. Shivram, you know the real problems of life? You can tell me privately. Jamna Mrityu Jara Vyadi, right? Okay.
Very intimately familiar with that.
Dukkha doshanu darshanam. The real problems. So how to end the real problems? You go beyond the real problems, and then you solve them. So the temporary profit doesn't solve the real problems of life. That's the point. And that's what he Prahlad, wants to teach his classmates. And that's what he, Srila Prabhupada, wanted to teach his students, his followers, and the world, for that matter. Why? Because he didn't want people to suffer unnecessarily. People should be happy. They shouldn't suffer unnecessarily. But they're suffering unnecessarily. So why is that? What's that suffering? It's due to ignorance. What to do about the ignorance? Remove the ignorance with knowledge. And some people are going to say, no. And some people are going to say, let me think about it. And some people are going to say, yes. And even if people say no, there's benefit because it's helping to cleanse the no, to become maybe. And then maybe to become yes. And the yes to become an experiencer of what is real happiness. Okay. Moving on to verse number 5. The phrase in this verse that Prabhupada would zoom in on, bhavam ashrita. Now, bhava and bhava are very different. Bhava is material existence, and bhavam ashrita, persons who have taken shelter of material existence. And when people take shelter of material existence, it's not nice. So then go back to that first verse, pragya. There's some persons that are intelligent and understand it's not nice. Even if I have or I don't have. I don't have, it's not nice, and I have, it's also not nice. It's not it's limited and temporary. Pragya refers to one who is experienced and who can distinguish right from wrong. Nice definition. Pragya means what is fixed intelligence, sthita pragya, fixed intelligence. I had, there was an Ayurvedic doctor that I was, developed a nice relationship with. He's no longer in this world. He left this world. But he was such a qualified Ayurvedic doctor that his guru, who was 130 years old, turned over all of his documents that were the original documents, or copies of the original documents of Ayurveda, and it's so many different divisions. And he asked him to make it available to people in general. So he had a team of scholars taking those manuscripts and making them available for people in general. And so we were having over in that room that was in his home, and over in that room that there was those scholars doing this part and those doing that part, and he was describing what was going on. And then he made this statement, this can bring one to the position of sthita pragya. And I surprised myself. I didn't stand up and shout at him, but I was very strong. I said, that's not possible without bhakti. One's intelligence can't become strong simply by reading some documents. And, from taking it in Sanskrit or bringing it into Hindi or English and reciting them, and now you're sthita pragya. It's not possible. Not how so he backed up. Yeah, with bhakti. I apologize for being so strong, but it's what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. It's not, it's this pragya, sthita pragya, fixed intelligence. Where does that come from? It comes from Krishna. And Krishna gives it, just like that Mundaka Upanishad we had some debate over yesterday. It is given, the intelligence is given from Supersoul to one who wants to be engaged in his service. And then you can be fixed in intelligence. And supposing you're on the fence, then sometimes and sometimes not, sometimes not, sometimes not. That's the nature of the limited and temporary. Here's the phrase in Bhagavad Gita, pragya pratishtha, pragya pratishtha, or sthita pragya. Nice passage. So here's the next series of verses. I'm going to try to end pretty quickly. He gives a little breakdown of 100 years of life. 10 years childhood or so. 10 years of boyhood, sporting. 60 years attached household life. 20 years invalid. Old age. There it is. Doesn't leave much wiggle room. Then he has another measure. 50% is sleep. 20 years of boyhood, childhood, that gives you 30 years. Then what are you going to do with those 30 years? Wasted in household life. He's a tough teacher, this Prahlad. And then there's the fate of that attached householder. They have a dream of what happiness is going to look like, but somehow it doesn't always work that way. That attached household life cannot liberate the soul. Rather, one becomes tightly bound by the strong ropes of affection for wife, children, relatives. Nice picture, but it doesn't lead to higher consciousness, generally speaking. Look at that, cobwebs. The attached household is like a silkworm, which weaves a cocoon in which it becomes imprisoned, unable to get out. Poor silkworm. Simply for the satisfaction of two important senses, the genitals and the tongue, one is bound by material conditions. The core of one's heart is immersed in how to accumulate money, even at the cost of one's dear life. One does not hesitate in cheating others. I mean, listen to Prabhupada's lectures. He goes on and on and on about these things. No, not everybody is unethical, but there's a lot of people that cut corners, and there's a lot of people that are also unethical. They don't mind it at all. They get their hand caught in the cookie jar, and they say, "My hand wasn't in the cookie jar." We won't name some names. One fails to understand the purpose of human life and wastes time. He's speaking to his classmates. These are young boys. Although one always suffers from the threefold miseries, one does not develop a distaste for the way of material existence. We don't want the suffering, but we want the way of material existence, which brings suffering. Bereft of knowledge of the Lord, they are bewildered and overcome by ignorance. Then he gets a little tougher with his friends. He speaks about the demons. Addicted to sense gratification, unable to liberate himself from material bondage, they keep aloof. He advises them, keep aloof from such persons. Take shelter of the personality of Godhead. Achieve liberation from bondage and material existence. I mean, this is Prahlad speaking to his classmates, but it's Prabhupada speaking to us in lecture after lecture after lecture, and he never tired of saying the same. He would use different words, but it's the same message. Don't stay attached. Please don't stay attached. Here's the foolishness of that kind of attachment. Please don't stay attached. Give up that attachment. The end. For now. So I guess we're going to be continuing Monday evening, because what's supposed to happen at the temple is something about Lord Ramachandra. And I don't know if this topic is going to be really good for a Sunday feast lecture. But I think all of you can handle it. Because it's true. Now, Prabhupada spoke like this in public lectures in Bombay, knowing there are people that are really attached, and they would keep coming and hear it anyways. I mean, some people stopped coming because they were like, I don't want to be unattached. I want to be attached, so don't tell me don't be unattached. He was like Prahlad, just fearless. He wanted, what he wanted was the same thing that Prahlad wanted. The people should suffer. They should be happy. And what's the cause of suffering? They don't know. Not te vidu svartakatimi Vishnu. They don't know. So he wanted them to know. And at least those that kept coming, some people would stop coming, but at least those that kept coming, they became benefited, as strong as he was. He was a very bold person, giving himself completely to helping other people become happy, which meant letting go of the sources of misery, materialistic way of life. And so it's not like picking on householders, just to happen to be a lot of householders. And so being attached to that anticipation of enjoyment comes in this way and that way and the other way in household life. That's not the purpose of household. It's not the spiritual purpose of household life. There is a spiritual purpose. And one can become spiritually elevated. But one needs that strong language and strong message and the application of that message. So be happy. Enjoy the festival of devotional service in relation to the supreme joyful person. And do it joyfully. And chant and dance and take prasadam and be joyful. But don't be indulgent in the mentality of separate kinds of enjoyment. That's Prahlad's message, and that's Prabhupada's message, that's the Bhagavatam's message. And we can sit and listen to it and nod our head and then decide what we're going to do. So let's see if there's some discussion. Speaking of Ramanujacharya is really nice, and then speaking of what Prahlad's teaching is a little, hot. Done.
I have a comment and a question, Maharaj. The brief comment is, I get a lot of inspiration from the fact that Prabhupada actually put this first verse of chapter 6 in the preface, so it shows up in every volume of the Bhagavatam.
Yeah.
And Prabhupada's commentary is how this message of Bhagavatam needs to be presented in schools and colleges. So for my own service, I receive a lot of inspiration from this particular verse. The question I had is from second verse of 6th chapter. And the last line, I think the verse didn't show up on the slides, but
No, it didn't.
the last line says, Priya, Atmeshwara and Surat. So Krishna is the dear one, the master of the soul, and Surat being the best well-wisher and friend.
Well-wisher.
Having all those three together in a single verse, is a very strong message coming from Prahlad Maharaj of how important in this relationship with Krishna is, how and how powerful, how much he actually loves us. So I would like to hear an expansion of these three facets of Krishna's affection for the living entity. And particularly, I've observed how we, struggling in this material world, we are to no end, just simply comparing ourselves to others and making it tough on ourselves. When Burjan Prabhu says in the Japa book, one of the things that helps us in Japa is understanding how much Krishna loves us. So if you could elaborate on this, I'd really appreciate it.
You did a pretty good job. Now, in different places, there are different statements of the mercifulness of Krishna. And by Vyasadev's composition of Srimad Bhagavatam, he chose those three, but there's, to start with, it's just like not three primary or three only, or it was inspired. Now, Suhrit, there are different ways of describing affection. Hrit is indicating the heart, and Suhrit is very affectionate from the heart. That's how Krishna feels. Now, Krishna's feeling even for people who have gone away from him. So what to speak of people who are trying to come again to him, which is in our position, at least sporadically trying, or maybe more than sporadically trying to be consistent in our trying. And he's Surit. So seeing that, he feels something. As we feel something, he feels something. And if we're very fortunate, we'll feel his feelings towards us and others who are trying to again return to our rightful position, our natural position, our wholesome position. unfortunately, we're inconsistent. Generally, we're inconsistent or anishtita, unsteady in our devotion. We're not sthita pragya. We're not staying fixed. The mind is doing its thing. So, still he's the Hrit, and there's the reciprocation. Our experience of that is going to be proportionate to our good association with saintly devotees and attempts to serve and please saintly devotees because that's pleasing to Krishna. And then slowly, slowly, that can become steady through purification of other things that aren't really what happiness is. That he's the soul of all living entities, the master. What's the Atma? Atmeshwara? Atma Ishwara. But the Ishwara of the Atma, it's not like a worldly Ishwara. A worldly Ishwara is a different kind of a person than Krishna. So on the spiritual, not just because it's on the spiritual platform, but it's the nature of Atma and Paramatma. It's you can say, it's easy to understand the affection that a father will feel for the son. It's just natural. The son can be, silly and kind of, inattentive and whatever little boys might do. But the father is always going to be affectionate toward their little son. So like that. Atma, Ishvara. He's the master controller. And such a loving person is to be served. And you made the comment, one of the things that helped Japa is to appreciate how kind and loving Krishna is. And he's making himself kindly and lovingly available in his holy name. How easy can you get? Well, it's made really easy because it's Kali Yuga and people won't take something that's not easy. These few people will take it. And the first of those three? Priya. So Priya means different things depending upon the context. Priya means different things. It's certainly connected to, but it's not the same as Suhrit. It's, Priya is feelings. It's a particular kind of feeling. It's a feeling of love. So love includes service, but Priya is the feeling that accompanies that service of love. So that's Prahlad's appreciation of Lord Vishnu. So he's not giving teachings on Braja Bhakti. He's giving teachings on Vaikuntha Bhakti or Aishwarya Prema. But just stay with the Srimad Bhagavatam, and it gets otherworldly beyond otherworldly. But the fundamental is to understand the Supreme Lord and his nature, his loving nature towards the living entities who have gone astray. He has feelings. He doesn't interfere. What a position to be in. He recognizes our free will choice. He doesn't appreciate it, doesn't want it, but he doesn't interfere with it. And he continues to feel feelings of affection and wish well for us. And the conclusion is he's the right one to serve. Because by nature we're servants. We're going to serve something or someone anyway, so why not such a person? Priya, Atmeshwara, Atmeshwara, and Surit. So we'd like to have friends like that, yeah? Something else? You have something? Online something or you? Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I have two questions. So one is from the Ramanujacharya's life. So before he met Yadava Prakash, did he? I mean, does he have any other guru, or did he hear any? I mean, the kind of teachings he was giving, the Vaishnava kind of translations or messages to the verses that Yadava Prakash was missing.
I don't have the answer to that. He must have been hearing from someone. Besides, it was already within him. But he must have been hearing from someone. And apparently, Kanchi Purna is one such person who he was hearing from. Because although he was by birth not elevated, by realization he was most elevated. And they had some affection for one another. You know, an elderly and a young, super student. So perhaps, and others, I don't know the history of his youth, from whom he heard, but someone.
My second question is about the Prahlad Maharaj teachings to his classmates. So the first verse, I mean, at the end, a small amount of sincere devotional service can give a complete perfection. So it is a big promise. I mean,
Well, wait. It's not a promise. It's a statement of fact.
Yeah, statement. So I was trying to compare, draw parallels with Krishna's promise, Neha Vikramana Sosti verse. So because here it says, my understanding was that it can save us from the falling down to the animalistic life, or continue perform devotional service from where we started or where we ended, right? So from the Neha Vikramana Sosti verse. So here it says that even the slightest amount of sincere devotional service can give complete perfection. Maybe if you can just explain a little bit more.
You want me to explain it? It's simple. There's potency. And how receptive are we to that potency doesn't change the potency. The potency is there in sincere devotional service to bring us to perfection, to the stage of perfection. There's a potency. And how is it going to be? Depending upon, how closer you are to the proper channel. Like a tuner, bring it into the right minute, you can receive the signal properly. So it's not an exaggeration of what the potency is. It's a statement of what the potency is. There's a qualifier at our side that's sincere. And then comes the question, okay, what's sincere? What are the different gradations of sincerity and all of that kind of discussion? But that's the qualification on our side. And the Krishna qualification is he's the deliverer, swift deliverer. And it doesn't say how long either. Arudha has her hand up. She wants to say something.
Maharaj, yesterday you were mentioning, and you reviewed the story today about how Yadav Prakash was trying to, who plotted to kill Ramanujacharya. And I was thinking about that and thinking how disgusting it was, in the sense that it seems like people who are intolerant of other people's religions, the envy that it's shown in their character seems like it's very, very deep.
Wait a minute, you speak clearly.
Yes.
Because I'm half deaf.
Okay. So the people who are intolerant of other people's religion,
Yes.
the envy that they exhibit in that intolerance, it seems like it's very is much deeper,
It's much deeper.
yes, than the envy shown by a materialist, perhaps, or I mean, like,
You want to explain what you're saying? You want me to explain what you're saying?
no, Maharaj, I would like to know more how does that work? I mean,
Well, I don't know that religious bias and material bias, one's better than the other one or stronger than the other one, or because some materialists can be really. I can tell you some stories. They can be really bad. So it's not just religious bias is strong. The other can be very strong. Very strong. Very strong. Now, why is it, protection? If I'm not right and you're right, I'm vulnerable. Anyway, some people become fanatical for different things. When confidence is excessive, and then something seems to stand in the way of that excessive confidence or conviction or something, then people get ugly, do and say ugly things. If you may want to answer your own question, because I'm not sure I agree with your assessment that religious pressure, because it can be political, it can be monetary, it can be all kinds of other things. All kinds of other things besides religious prejudice.
what about the Mayavadi's offensive nature? In other words, we see that again, how Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was also threatened, and also Ramachandra Puri's, envy of Lord Chaitanya and all those. Like,
What's your point? I mean, maybe you should give a little talk on what your point is, because I'm not clear what your point is.
I mean, Mayavadis are supposed to be a transcendentalist also, right? So
So Mayavadis are supposed to be transcendentalists, and
so why do they become so offensive in terms of wanting to?
well, their offensive offensiveness is, it's different things. There's personality, and then there's what they say. What they say is the real offensive, and their personality is their personality. So their offensiveness is going to come out differently according to personality. I mean, you're looking at me like I'm supposed to say something, so I'll say something. I had an experience with an Indian gentleman who had become a Christian, and he saw, I was, flying in an airplane, he saw me, and he's like, I'm going to get him. And we got to the luggage claim, and he came to get me. And it started doing his thing, you're going to burn in hell, and you take Jesus Christ. And I said, leave me alone, go save yourself, man, And he wouldn't leave me alone, And I said, I'm going to call the police. You leave me alone. And then, then there's the other extreme. So another extreme, traveling on Southwest Airlines, and I'm from Chicago to New York. Half the flight was people who were going to, then the headquarters of the Seventh-day Adventists, isn't it? Seventh-day Adventist was in Brooklyn. Seventh-day Adventists. Watchtower, those people. Seventh-day Adventists. Huh?
Jehovah's Witnesses. Yeah.
Jehovah's Witnesses. Yeah. There we go. Jehovah's Witnesses. Thank you. So, I'm in a Hare Krishna guy sitting in a plane that's half filled with Jehovah's Witnesses, going to Mecca, going to, the headquarters of the Jehovah's Witnesses publishing place in Brooklyn. So, they're look, and then pointing to their leader came and sat next to me. He said, okay, you have an empty seat here. You mind if I sit next to you? And I said, okay, here we go. Sure, go ahead. And then he asked, rather than, bit my head off. He said, he asked, was this something that you were part of when you were growing up? I said, no. Said, what was the impetus for you to move from what you were doing? He probably asked what faith or something. And what was the impetus for you to do what you did? So I gave him answers. Nice answers. The answer I said, the finishing one is I found a perfect person. I said, I was reading many. I had many questions. I didn't find answers to those questions in my college days through my own tradition, and I found answers in this other tradition, and especially in Bhagavad Gita. And he went, And then I said, I found that the teachings that I grew up with, I was better able to fulfill them in this way than I was before. I didn't change horses. It's just, it's the same principles, and I'm living by them better now than I was before. I went, And then I said, and I found a perfect person who I'm the disciple of. I said, Well, nice speaking with you. And I was a hopeless case. It was very different than that other person's experience, because the personality of the first man that I described was a certain kind of a person. Go talk to a wall or go talk to your wife or something. I don't know. Leave me alone. My point is the harshness can be the personality, not necessarily this a religious view or something else. Because political views can be harsh, or whatever people can be harsh over money, over values, and over all kinds of things. It's personality based, not difference based necessarily. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. My question is from the first verse of Prahlad Maharaj's teachings.
Okay.
I was wondering if you could clarify what he means when he says to give up all other activities. Because I think at least my instinct when reading statements like that is to ignore it or to think it's just an over-exaggeration. But obviously
your understanding, it means to do what?
When I read statements like that are so severe, my thought is this is an exaggeration. But I know it's being spoken for a reason. So I was wondering if you could clarify, how do we practically apply that instruction when we have so many other responsibilities as householders?
Okay, let's go to the verse. And so we're very specific, hopefully. The verse is somewhere. Okay. Giving up all of the engagements. Okay. Practice. So, in other words, from the tender age of childhood, practice the activities of devotional service, giving up all other engagements. And your reading is, it's kind of strong to help people stay away from being distracted, and it's not really to be taken literally.
My instinct is to feel that way, but I know that it's being spoken.
There's something deeper.
Right.
Well, sure. And it's not just householders, it's people that have bodies. Having affection, here's something to share with you. I'm not married, I don't have any children, but I have so many children. And one of those persons who I knew from childhood, like you, is struggling a little bit with parents that are overbearing. And they don't respect that she's got a moral compass, she has values, and she lives by them, and they're overly doting upon her. and that makes her uncomfortable. It's not like, and they're not respecting, et cetera, et cetera. So she asked, can you give a seminar on parenting to our parents? So I'm going to do it because she asked. And she's like, yay. So parenting is one of those things. You know, you were a daughter with nice parents, and they probably said some things and did some things that, you know, weren't in keeping with your self-dignity, and, you know, why are you doing like this? But, you know, you lived with it because they're your parents. So then now you're grown up, and now you have your own child. So what's the response? Giving up other engagements doesn't mean stop being a householder or stop having a body and being concerned about others, like I'm concerned about this young person that wants some little relief, please, from on the parenting side towards them, or towards, I'm not even going to say their gender. So giving up all other engagements has everything to do with the consciousness behind. It's like sarvadharmam parityaja doesn't mean trash everything that Krishna said. Now, one can take a reading like that. All other things, trash it. Just trash it. All other things, just do one thing. Mam ekam sharanam. Sarvadharmam parityaja. Some take it like that, and some from commentaries express it like that. But you know, if that emerges, then what's left? It's, you know, the culture of a person who has taken full shelter of Krishna, and they live a dharmic life, but they're not taking shelter of the dharmic principles to get to the full shelter of Krishna. So giving up all other engagements means, the way that I take it at least, is to Krishnaize what you do. Krishnaize your motherhood. Krishnaize your owning a house. Krishnaize your cooking, you know, and affection that you have for your husband and your family and friends and circle, and Krishnaize it. The other engagements is minus Krishna. And giving up all other engagements is the other minus Krishna style. And then gradually, as you Krishnaize the things that your life is made up of, it doesn't mean that then you come to the stage where you just throw them away. It's just, now they're Krishnaize, and you can be more focused on things that you feel are Krishna's gift for you, and you do those things more and effectively. And the other engagements are off to the side because they were something that's part of your makeup today, and it's not so much part of your psychophysical makeup tomorrow. So you're doing those things that you feel you're most gifted. So at any given stage, specifically the context of the question was in household life, but, you know, there's student life. You know, and, you know, without going into it, students are struggling with their career and, you know, in relationship and needing friendships and not feeling understood, and, you know, all those things that go on with young people. And how do I do with this, and what do I do with that? And so stay focused. That we give up all their engagements is to Krishnaize those things that you do. And you may streamline it to some extent, but you don't trash it. You spiritualize what you do. That's the Sarvadharmam Parityaja message. You probably heard me say this many times. I've said it so many times. Like a chandelier. You know that metaphor? Okay. You know what a chandelier is? Yeah, you do. Okay, supposing you have a chandelier and it's just lying on the floor. Nice crystal, but it's kind of useless. Even if you plug it in, it's still useless, even though the light's on. But if you hang it from the ceiling, and then this nice crystal and this nice diffused light, and it's especially if it's clean. It's really nice. It's beautiful. But it requires a thing that it's suspended from the ceiling. Otherwise, it's useless. So the one thing that makes the other things useful, the usefulness of the other things, is the one thing. So take this one thing, and all of the other things, they're superfluous. They may be enhancers of the beauty of the one thing, but it's the one thing. And give up all other engagements as if they're standalone things. Take having money. Householders have to take care of their household. So it doesn't mean stop earning, give up the engagement of having money. But, how do I see that thing that's part of my household life? And there's different ways. And then, there's the one way that this is Krishna's, and it's meant for he gave the ability and he gave the results, and it's his. Now let me use it in that consciousness. And then you apply that to anything. Your child. Krishna gave. So it's Krishna's. She is Krishna's. So because she is Krishna's, let me take care of her for Krishna as in that sense. It applies to what he was saying earlier, Prabhupada was saying earlier about don't go to friends and enemies consciousness. But all living beings are Krishna's servants. Now this is that Uttama Adhikari platform, but that's how he's seeing it. He's lifting his classmates to the same, give up this other, the duality thing and the temporary thing, and seeing the absolute reference to Krishna thing. And give up the other things, the non-related to Krishna things. And don't just put some glue and stick this one onto Krishna, but make it Krishna, make it Krishnaized. And that's spiritual life. Balaram Prasad. I think we'll just take one or two more, and then we're going to wrap up. I see you. You're right in front row.
Maharaj, I feel that I'm sitting here, but I'm not here.
Oh?
But what I mean to say is...
I do, yeah.
Children are 5-year-old, they're downstairs. And Prahlad Maharaj is 5 years old, teaching to fire all their mates. What intelligence they had to understand, and what happened to them after listening to the Prahlad Maharaj. That's bothering me.
They were lifted. And they were engaged in kirtan until Chandranamarka came in and blew the whistle. Stop! But they were spiritually lifted. Your question is, what happened to the students? They were spiritually lifted. Now, because they're not of Prahlad's caliber, like Prahlad's mother also forgot, they're likely they also forgot. Just like we may also have a nice experience and then become back to business as usual and forget. So likely that's what happened with them too.
It's difficult to understand because when Prahlad Maharaj was in the womb, he could understand the spirituality from Narada. But when the children are born at the 5 years, see, they can't even sit, they will keep it running. I don't know whether how much they can understand at the age of 5. So that's what my thought process is.
Okay, but you're saying the same thing again.
Yeah, I'm just...
I'll say the same thing again. Yesterday, I saw his son sitting there so peacefully in his lap. So I was thinking to say something during class, but I didn't. So I said something after class, but his son was too shy, so I said it. And I commented, I don't know how much he understood. And the answer was, not much. But the spiritual effect is there nonetheless. It's just like that picture of Dwarkadish and Prabhupada. He got DDD, Dwarkadish Das, was initiated disciple of Prabhupada. He got so much mercy. And it didn't stick with him externally, but internally, it's with him forever. That mercy that he got from Prabhupada. And he grew up to become a young man, and it wasn't, I don't know any of the details, but he wasn't DDD anymore. He was kind of like just, a worldly person. Or Saraswati, Malati's, and how many times did Prabhupada refer to Saraswati, and what did she do as a little girl? What was her understanding of what she's doing today? It's not the same, but it's a permanent asset. So his classmates of Prahlad, getting Prahlad's association and getting his instructions from him, permanent. So you don't measure it with material yardsticks, it's spiritual. And, same for, I've been thinking, I'm really impressed with how many of the young people are sitting here still. I'm impressed. I've been complimenting. There's some that get up and went somewhere, but that's okay. Those of you that are still here, and how much you're understanding, you're still sitting, and it's a permanent asset. It's a permanent asset. So, congratulations to all of you who are still sitting here, because that's the understanding. Many times Prabhupada would say, they may understand, they may not understand. Even speaking about chanting Hare Krishna, they may understand, they may not understand, that's okay. They may appreciate, they may not appreciate, that's okay. You understand? Here's a Tamal Krishnamurti story. Prabhupada was giving a Pandal program somewhere in South India, and he saw that the audience weren't going to be able to understand English, so he started speaking in, I guess, Hindi. And then the sannyasis and the Western disciples looked at each other, and they got up and were going to walk out. Prabhupada said, "Sit down. You may not understand, but you'll benefit. Just sit down." Then about himself, I would listen to my Guru Maharaj, and my brain was puzzled. But I had faith, so I sat and listened. And for that reason, today I have the qualification to speak. So, congratulations for sitting here, and who knows how much you're able to comprehend, but it's beneficial. Well done. And the rest of you also. It's easy to get restless. It's real easy. You're the last person. The best. We're saving the best for last. We're saving the best for last. And you're not the best. Tomorrow. No.
Hare Krishna. I have a couple of questions and comments. So, the one point about...
Can you turn up the volume? He's got this voice that's...
Pardon? This is better?
He's going to turn the volume. You do your thing. Go ahead.
One of the points you made was appreciate how kind and loving Krishna is. And, one way I see that...
That was Burijan's point.
Oh, okay.
I just repeated it. That's a nice point.
And the one way I can do this is appreciate Krishna for all that I'm getting, and also appreciate my different fathers for all that they've been doing for me. So
And some others too.
And some others too, yes. Mhm. So that's one point that I wanted to make, that it's a little bit more easier perhaps to understand what I'm receiving through the medium of my fathers.
This is the point you made yesterday too.
Oh, okay. In a different
It's
way.
okay. It's okay. It's good to say it again. You didn't use the same language, but it's the same point.
Right. So thank you, Guru Maharaj.
I was
And-
listening to you. I caught it.
And then another point is, or question rather, is about a slight amount of devotional service.
So I was trying to understand the slight amount of devotional service, and I came back again to the same point that we just discussed now, that,
Sincere. Let's use the adjective, right?
oh,
Oh,
slight amount of sincerity. Is that the main point?
that's the main thing.
Okay.
It's the heart. It's not the behavior, it's the heart.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. And I don't know, you're probably going to laugh at this, but when I was
He's laughing already.
when I see this verse, Kaumaram Acharyat Pragyu, and then I went in the reverse direction and said, what is my spiritual age seeing this? And it seems like I've not even reached the Kaumaram age.
That's okay.
So it's kind of
Keep growing. You get there.
okay.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. What's up? Oh. Okay, give him the microphone. Behind you. Behind you. I'm sorry. I my mistake. He's got it written down, just in case.
So,
Do the Sanskrit first, because you did it yesterday, then the English.
okay.
You forgot?
Yeah. What was the first word? Sarva Sitraham. I know. Yeah. Sarva Sitraham Hridi Sannivishtam Mata Smritir Gyanam Apohanam Cha Vedasya Sarveraham Eva Vedyo Vedanta Krit Veda Videva Chaham.
Very good. Very good. And in the translation?
I reside in everyone's heart, and from me comes knowledge, forgetfulness, and remembrance. And I am known from the Vedas, and I am the compiler of the Vedanta, and the knower of the Vedas.
Very good. So what will happen as you read Prabhupada's books and you hear the verse, a little light's going to go on. Oh, I know that one. And then when you'll because your light's on, you'll be more attentive to the way in which Prabhupada is using it. And then another place he's using it in a slightly different way. You start. Looks like class is over. You'll start to appreciate the kindness of our founder Acharya, and how in so many different ways he's giving and giving and giving light in this age of darkness. Srila Prabhupada ki, Prahlad Maharaj ki, Gaur Premanandi Hari Bol.